left for the land, 230 at 20.
You're listening to STEM Essential, an Iowa Governor's STEM Advisory Council podcast. Hear from leading advocates and voices about why STEM education is crucial for our world today and tomorrow.
3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeff Weld, Director of Iowa's STEM Council. STEM is Iowa's and our nation's edunomic development initiative, where education and economic development merge to improve lives and communities. The voices of leading edunomic developers are heard on this podcast, which is generously co-sponsored by Collins Aerospace and MidAmerican Energy, proud partners of Iowa's STEM Council. Today's guest is Kathryn Kunert, Vice President of Economic Connections and Integration at MidAmerican Energy and a member of the Executive Committee of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Thank you for joining us, Kathryn.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. Let's begin with a personal revelation, if you don't mind. Share with our STEM community something that few would know about you that had a profound or maybe a subtle profound impact on your own professional path or your current STEM practices, making you who you are.
Well, as I think about that, Jeff, I'd like to think it's maybe as I, with my MidAmerican hat on, obviously, when we looked at the change in our own company and what was happening to us as we looked at the needs of our company, and particularly due to workforce, and the fact that we were going to have such a monumental change in our workforce. We were going to be having a large transition from our current workforce to retirement. So that left a huge hole in all of the different various assets and employees that we needed to meet the needs to replace all of that experience and expertise that we know that was going to be transitioning into their next phase of and retirement. So we thought it was that was a very eye-opening moment when you're going to lose particularly 65% of your workforce over, say, a 10-year time span. And so it was one of those things then you look at and you understand that all of the skill sets that you were losing, whether it was on the front lines with your line crews or your gas crews, but then you look internally as well and you think about your accounting expertise, your IT expertise, your treasury expertise, your communications expertise, your engineering expertise, and really what are all the different skill sets that you needed. And at that point in time, then we were challenging ourselves as how do we replace that? What do we need to do? Where do we need to be engaged? And what is that path that we want to travel to ensure that we have the long-term sustainability within our company to serve our customers? And it became very clear that STEM was the path to go, because as I rattled off all of those different professions, there's not a single one of them that doesn't affect or have an impact from STEM. And so I think it was really, really important for us to understand that we had to make sure that we had the right skill sets and that we had the ability to attract as well. And it was also important to us, too, to understand that a lot of our workforce represents all different, obviously, skill sets and jobs, and that not all of it was college education based. And so that was another really important reason to get into STEM and recognize that many of the skill sets that were supported by STEM across all the various boundaries and sectors really have an impact to play. So I think that was our aha moment, so to speak, about what it meant to have a prepared workforce and what it really meant to ensure that you had that long-term sustainability for making sure that you had all the skill sets and all the different jobs, properly prepared for.
Yeah, wonderful insights. So, Kathryn, MidAmerican competes for that talent, obviously, with a variety of other sectors. Those same sorts of talents that you've cited as valuable under your shop's roof are also the same talents that the manufacturing community is clamoring for, the research community, the healthcare industry, the IT sector. How does MidAmerican compete for these relatively rare talents that so many are also chasing?
Well, I would like to say, first of all, our culture helps us compete. I'm a very proud employee of MidAmerican Energy, and I always say it's the people that really matter. And so I think the culture that we have, as well as the ability for our employees to really take advantage of the situation that's provided to them at MidAmerican to advance their skills. There's a new opportunities provided to them every day. And I think the fact that you're part of an essential service, and if you look at where we're at today, the need and the talent and the skills that our employees provide to ensure that we have that that reliable, affordable energy, even in a crisis, and not miss a beat. I think that's something that we like to say that we're also very proud of, and that we focus on safety and health and well-being of our employees is really a competitive advantage in all the different skill sets and resources then that we bring to the table. And I think we provide just a unique opportunity of the various things that we get to touch all day, every day, all the different needs that our customers have to support, whether it's a manufacturing industry or the insurance industry or a school or a hospital or really even a community. What are those needs of a community that, as a utility provider, we touch and feel every day, and the value that we bring to support all of the various industries and all of the community needs. And, it's simple, from keeping your lights on. Nobody wants to think about that, right? You just want it there. You want your power there. And so I think having the ability to do that and have that hands-on impact all day, every day on somebody's life, I think is really, really important to our employees, and the fact that we have such a huge task at hand all day, every day, and to deliver it very, very safely to our customers, I think is really important, and just the long-term sustainability that we bring to all of our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. MidAmerican employees never have to go to bed at night wondering if they made a difference today at work.
That is very true.
That's a great advantage. I want to focus just back on you a little bit, Kathryn, personally. What does a VP, a vice president for economic connections and integration, do for the company?
So I'm blessed. I have many hats that I get to wear. Obviously, we work with, I say, my job is responsible for all of our external relationships at the business level and above. So that's our business customers, our large customers, whether it's in a tech company, a manufacturer, ethanol, all those customers. We also have all the community relations. We have all the economic development aspects that a utility provides to our communities. We do all of our sponsorships and donations through my team. We do all of our corporate citizenship work. So get to affect a lot of positive impacts with our customers to ensure that they have what they need, and that we're there as their partner. And that's, I think, what is really great about our job is we're the partner that helps drive jobs, that we help drive community strategies, that we help institute or invest in the changes that are needed to create that long-term sustainability, create that resiliency that our customers are expecting. So we're really the face of the company for those customers to ensure that they have that safe, affordable, and reliable energy brought to them with the renewable aspect to it as well.
Wonderful. And we're grateful at the STEM Council that one of the relationships you've targeted for building is by serving on the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Thank you. So, Kathryn, in the event that there's some kids out there listening to this podcast, or parents or teachers who are coaching kids toward careers of the future, and they are inspired by what you do in particular, what are the skill sets or habits of mind or knowledge bases that you recommend if a young Iowan aspires to do what you do? What sort of advice do you give them to prepare for that pathway?
So I think there's many different careers at MidAmerican Energy that have long-term value and are very successful and create an amazing life for folks. And whether you're in a rural community or a more urban community, there's so many aspects. And obviously, you think about technology, particularly anything that touches technology is incredibly important. Whether you're working for us or if you're working for an industry, a manufacturer, anything technology, I think is incredibly important. And I also think then about the fact that communication skills are incredibly important. Just the ability to connect different pieces to work smarter and be more effective, I think are really important. And I think also think boldly, think differently, and the fact that there are many opportunities out there. I think sometimes we have to really understand what our opportunities are. I think if you look at MidAmerican more specifically, you may think of just the pipes and the wires. But as I indicated earlier, there are so many careers at MidAmerican Energy, and they're transferable to other companies as well. So when you have a strong workforce at our company, it supports strong workforces, I believe, at other companies as well. And so whether it's, with a strong math to support, accounting or treasury or the financial side of a business, or with technology, if it's IT, engineering, system planning, all those different sorts of things. And I think it's really critically important to understand the different careers that are available. And I call them careers because I believe we're blessed at MidAmerican that it's not just a job, it's an actual career that individuals can have. And I think they need to understand that there's different paths to take. Some can go on to college. That makes sense for some. But some of our best jobs and careers at MidAmerican are not necessarily college based. Our apprentice program that we have for our linemen and our journeymen, and for our gas operators, it's just absolutely amazing opportunity for those individuals who choose that path. They get to work outdoors. They get to work with their hands along with their minds. They get to touch technology. They get to think of new creative ways to serve that customer, to design a system. And so I think there's so many opportunities for certificates and apprenticeships and training and licensures that people need to consider. And so another reason we got so involved with STEM was to do just that. We knew that, how people may think of a utility is much different than what we actually are. And so we knew we had to engage with teachers and with parents and with students alike and get started with them early, so that when they started to make choices of considering different paths, we needed to get in front of them to have them understand that, hey, if you took math, there's a job for you at MidAmerican. Hey, if you took engineering, there's a job for you at MidAmerican. If you took technology, IT, procurement, all of those things have an opportunity for you at MidAmerican. And so many of the things that you see us partner with and invest in is the ability for people to learn early, both the parent and the student and the educator, to recognize the opportunities for that career within our utility.
Right. So much is about awareness of the jobs that exist in our state, the careers, opportunities that exist in our state. In fact, I want to turn toward that focus on K-12 STEM education and workforce development. It's the theme of this conversation we're having. And it's a relatively new ask of educators to see themselves as workforce developers. In fact, to some, and I'm sure there will be listeners to this podcast who are educators who say, workforce development's not my issue. My issue is to produce a competent, functional, healthy citizen. But STEM has definitely put a workforce development thrust into the K-12 education world. what do you say to educators and others about the role of K-12 STEM in workforce development who might say that sounds like someone else's job?
That's interesting to me, Jeff, because I think it ties into some of my previous response is the fact that when I have my economic development hat and we're talking to business recruitment people all the time who are thinking about either expanding their business here or locating their business here, regardless of what type of industry sector we're talking to, that one of the top three ability to locate or stay in an area is workforce. And so we're competing for workforce globally. And it is very important that we may ensure our talent is ready to go when we have those opportunities to retain or expand or attract existing business. And they need to know, what does that pipeline look like long term? And if you understand what that pipeline long term is, then you have a leg up. You have that competitive advantage when you're doing that business recruitment, attention, and retraction work from the economic development aspect. Because that employer needs to know that even if there is a blip in the screen with their workforce, that they've got a way to attract new, and that pipeline is constantly generating. And it takes all of us. And the educators in particular have to be aware of what that opportunity is so that when they're looking at filling through the education aspect, that pipeline, they know that they're properly preparing that student for their future career path.
And what are some of the tactics or strategies you and MidAmerica have been a part of, or that you know of that have taken place in Iowa or somewhere across the country that help today's teachers dial in to that product that's being sought by the world of business and industry? You could argue that myself, I came out of teacher preparation in the 1980s, and I'm obviously not in the business of teaching at this time, but many of my peers are. And what do you see happening that's keeping those folks up to speed as your needs change, the talents that are brought in with new employees change, and for educators to keep up with that rate of change, and what sort of strategies employers like you are employing to do that?
We're doing, I would say, several things to hit on different cylinders so that, we're just not singularly focused, because we know we too have to work across various opportunities to capture that workforce down the road, so to speak. So we do several things. We are very actively engaged with FTC. We literally sponsor every FTC team in our service area in Iowa. So that's one way to really connect with that student and that teacher and that parent, to get up in front of those folks, that they understand, that what they're doing by learning how to use that robot, that transfers pretty darn quickly into using those skill sets in the utility industry. So that's one thing. We do a lot of recruitment on college campuses and with high schools. So I think that's a huge piece for people to understand. And we're out there, we're proactively going to the student as well. We're very active with internships, very, very active. And I mentioned our apprenticeships. So that's something that I think is very valuable to our long-term workforce strategy. Also, we are investing very heavily in the career academies that are being stood up across our state, that you can be very proud of, that you're a part of as well. Those career academies are, I think, the key to our future. And it brings into the student aspects of what is needed when they get into the workforce and actually into that place of employment. And so the career academies, for instance, here in Des Moines and in Waterloo and Sioux City and Council Bluffs are just some great examples of where we invest both with our financial resources and our employee resources. And I think it's also too important to recognize that through our corporate citizenship program, which is CARES, which stands for our community enhancements, the C, arts and cultures, the A, R is environmental respect, E is education, STEM, and safety. And so we have one of our pillars of giving is focused on education and STEM. And I think that focus helps us to really dial into all of the various initiatives and opportunities for us to partner with to ensure that we're getting out in front of our future workforce that has that long-term impact.
Wonderful. Setting a wonderful example for employers across Iowa, across the nation, who seek ways to engage more in the development of their future employees. Well done. So let's talk about current status of STEM education generally. Kathryn, you watch all this closely. You're an active participant in the STEM education movement. How would you characterize in general? Clearly, MidAmerican is deeply involved on a number of levels in enhancing the preparatory pipeline for employees. What's your opinion overall about the status of STEM education today in Iowa, as well as regionally and across the country? Are we where we need to be? Are we on the way? Are we taking too long for your inclination? How would you characterize current status?
I think the current status is solid. I think, we can all be very proud of Iowa as definitely, I believe, a leader. And I can see that with some of the things that I've mentioned, just it doesn't matter if you're in a small town. I remember the Holstein kids that came in and presented to our board STEM council meeting. That was impressive. That's a small rural Iowa town. And what those kids were doing with technology and computers, that's game changing. So I think that's really important to recognize that it knows no boundaries. And I think Iowa can be very proud that we have torn down boundaries, that we're just not limited to where there's a large population or a concentrated wealth of whether it's financial or other to be able to elevate STEM. I think the fact that it's a public-private partnership that has come together, I think is critically important. I think that elevates our ability to continue to lead and really be assertive with our work. And so I think there's several things there that make us very proud and can understand the fact that we've lifted up apprenticeships, the fact that we're focused on upskilling, the fact that we've got those career academies. Our community college is partnering with our Regents universities, I think are incredibly important aspects to show. I think the fact that we have externships, the fact that our teachers are becoming much more engaged to understand what businesses are actually needing so that they can take that back to the classroom. So I think all that collaboration, that coordination, it shows that Iowa is really doing some things well. And I would almost say that we're probably doing them better than most because we have torn down so many of the barriers and we've taken our challenges and turned them into opportunities.
Yeah, well said. And I completely agree. We've got all the players on the court. I don't see anybody in the bleachers watching this STEM crusade go by.
That is correct.
So let's do a crystal ball thing. That's kind of current status, and your hopeful optimism is recognized there with all the wonderful activities taking place in Iowa. A lot of great leadership and vision, and a lot of intrepid educators and employers, I think, making the current status pretty strong in our state. What about 10 years out, 40 years out? Let's go to year 2030, year 2050. What do you see for STEM education a decade out, a half of a century out? How's it going to look different than it looks now?
That's really hard to tell, but I think with some of the strategies and plans that we have in place, and if we implement them, if we continue to invest in them, I believe that we'll continue to see the changes it be advanced, whether it's through the technology aspect of it, continually to have the internships and the apprenticeships expand and continue to grow that workforce to support the needs of manufacturing. Because we're not going to change who we are. We're a manufacturing, we're a finance, we're an ag state. And so I think the things that we can do to ensure that we are focusing on the needs to build on our strengths and capitalize on the opportunities that we have here, I mean, we're not going to change from the fact that we feed the world. And all of the technologies that we see that are being advanced and are being, you know, investigated and being researched. I think all of that is going to continue to build. And I think the fact that it's also a very, not only is it a statewide issue, but it's a nonpartisan issue. And I will say the fact that we are continually investing in it, both with our resources of people and money and time, and that we've made it our priority. And Iowa has a strong track record, obviously, in education, and we're not letting, as you say, we're not letting the gas up on that. So I believe that if we continue to stay focused, I think the other thing is we got to think bold and we got to think big. One of my sayings that I always use with my team is if we're doing today what we did yesterday, we're already behind for tomorrow. And so I think if we cannot hesitate to try new things and think outside the box. That's a very cliche type term, but I think it's something we need to continue to embrace in Iowa is to think bold and think big. And think differently so that we can create that competitive advantage here for our long-term employers, much for the future to come.
Right on. And I do love the fact that STEM education in our state and everywhere is a nonpartisan issue. There's something for everybody to love when you get STEM education right. And I think we're well on the way there. So you think about, as you say, staying focused and thinking big and being bold and then there must be inhibitors that we need to watch for. The question I would have asked you is, what are some threats to that future vision for STEM education? You started naming them. If we don't stay focused, if we aren't thinking big and being bold, and what are some of the inhibitors that come to mind that will prevent us from that fix that you feel we need and that big vision that is going to be essential?
Well, I think, some of them that I think are right in front of our face that we still have to fix. And I know it is a focus and people are working on it, but our connectivity, we just have to continue to focus on that until it's actually fixed and implemented. We've been talking about connectivity for a very long time. And we need to bring that over the finish line. So I think that is one issue that we need to get all behind here sooner rather than later. And there's just no reason not to do that. So I think that's huge. I think the other thing is we still need to work on, I think, the stigma that comes in with the manufacturing job and, the old fashioned factory thing. I think we're fools if we think that manufacturing is what our grandfathers or even fathers worked in. It's very high tech. It's very fast paced. It's very clean. And it's very forward thinking. And the skills and the education that you need to compete in the manufacturing industry today is so different. And so I think it's really, really important that we educate our students and our parents to recognize the value in the careers that are in the manufacturing industry and how they've changed and transformed, and that this generation and the generations to come are much, much different. So those are a couple of the things that I think come to pass almost immediately, Jeff, that we need to address currently. And when we get those, I think, managed and get our arms around those, then I think we'll be even more successful and be even more competitive.
Yes, indeed. So, Kathryn, if you had a magic wand that you could wave over the system of K-12 STEM education and you cite challenges that we're going to have to navigate having to do with connectivity and perceptions of the skilled technical workforce, if you had this magic wand and you could instantly transform K-12 education or informal education for that matter. So much of what kids learn is learned at night and on weekends at camps and science centers and what have you. And of course, there's higher education. This is the system, right? This three-legged stool system of education that prepares a future STEMmer. And of course, I should factor in prominently the role of parents in there as a fourth leg. What would you do with this magic wand? What would you implement? What would you declare or decree that these systems change in order to help realize this potential?
Yeah, I would say stick to the basics and really understand the value of the basics and focus on them. and advance those to the next level. And I would make sure that there is great connectivity with the business world to understand the fact that what the future holds, and not to isolate a school from a business and vice versa. I think that, we've created that path, Jeff, but if I could put my golden wand out there, as you suggest, I would make sure that we tear down those boundaries even more and ensure that there is complete connectivity, not only through fiber and broadband, but complete connectivity on what are the resources that an employer really needs for a student to bring to them, and that our educators focus on those specific skill sets and tools that are needed.
Right on. I would guess if you polled our STEM Council, that would be a favorite aspect of the work we're all doing together, is reconnecting the worlds of education and the world of employment, commerce, workforce. And we're definitely making headway there. Thank you. Wrapping it up, Kathryn, I'm inspired by your vision and your commitment and your company's commitment to this opportunity we have in STEM education, our leadership position nationwide here in Iowa. Take us out with something that you've heard lately, or something that you did, your company did, something you read, something that occurred to you one late night, something that inspired you about STEM education in Iowa or across the nation that's really giving you a lot of hope lately.
Well, I'm going to look at us here a little bit internally, and we have built at MidAmerican a training center for our employees to be able to provide the latest technology for our employees. And it's a state-of-the-art training center, in particularly that focuses on technology for our crews that are out working to keep the lights on and the heat flowing for each and every one of our customers. And I think the technology that we have brought to our employees is really inspiring for that long term. And I think, as I've said earlier, the skills that they learn are very transferable. And just the fact that the investment that we're making in our employees and that long term future for the sustainability then of our state and I think for our customers is huge, because if we have a strong workforce ourselves, I think the investment and the commitment that we have made in our employees is incredibly important for our customers, to ensure that they know that they've got very well qualified people running that system that they need to not have to think about. And I think that's been a very big aha moment for us. And particularly for me, as I see the investments that we're making to support our employees that, impact the sustainability of our businesses and our community.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking for a few million customers, thank you for building it.
Yeah, thanks. Can't wait to show it off.
I can't wait to see it. Kathryn Kunert, Vice President of Economic Connections and Integration from MidAmerican Energy. Thank you for sharing your compelling vision of STEM with Iowans and our partners across the country.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for this opportunity, and thank you for all that you are doing as the leader of the Governor's STEM Council, and thank you for having our involvement. It's quite an honor to be a part of it, and it's certainly exciting to recognize and know that our state is such a leader in the STEM education for our students.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. This has been episode 2 of STEM Essential, a podcast series featuring the voices of edunomic innovation, brought to you by the Iowa Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Thank you all for listening. Please join me next week to hear from Dr. Mark Putnam, president of Central College in Pella, who will take up higher education STEM. Today's and all STEM Essential podcasts are available at iowastem.gov/podcast.
Thank you for listening to STEM Essential.